working at the Joint Chiefs of Staff, again, continually advancing in the military. That was an important assignment because our country had kind of lost that edge in terms of our capabilities. We had spent so many years fighting nation-state wars, right, that we were not ready to take on larger actors, more sophisticated actors. So I was able to play a role with my background, both in intelligence, technology, and acquisition, to provide that kind of knowledge and insight to the vice chairman and other general officers who were in need of that. And I'm proud that we were able to reverse some of that decline and move forward and get capability now that is going to allow us a chance to defend this country further out into the future. When I moved to Ohio, I met my wife 10 years ago. She's from the Delaware, Ohio.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, so in her family grew up, in a kind of a farming community and raised themselves up, in big families, big Polish-German family. And so I really married well with her, and she followed me throughout my assignments. And I said, I owe it to my wife. We got to get back here, right? Because they go around and do all these sacrifices for you. And I've enjoyed it, and I've loved living here. I've lived in Ohio for several years and been a part of the community and been supporting civically my activities. What I would tell you is that I got involved on the election space in 2022. We had an election with a lot of questionable activities in the county for a commissioner. The person won the race on election night, and over the course of 2 weeks, the counting reversed all that. So it was a real question of what's happening, who's at the counting process, and it became pretty clear that there were issues and questions that were not being addressed. We asked for an investigation. The director at the time didn't want to proceed, accused the candidate of being a liar, and I didn't think that all rubbed right, so it got me more involved. And then I started working at the state level. And before you know it, I was in the Secretary of State's office. I was making contact with them. I was trying to identify issues and offer solutions. And that's where I was and have been for the last 2 years. I've written 3 election legislation bills to address the issues of weak voter registration eligibility verification, to address the mail-in ballot no photo ID issue that we have, where you don't have to provide a copy of a photo ID and you can vote by mail, to address the issues of third-party voter registration groups that have been permitted for some time now to defraud the registration process without, I would say, consequence, because there haven't really been convictions. If anything, the people get fired, but then they just hire some other folks for $25 an hour, and it just keeps going on and on and on. These are all areas that I consider risk or vulnerability. And the way I would look at the Secretary of State job is, it's all about risk management. It's all about identifying your areas of vulnerability and susceptibility and building in safeguards there. And if we do that and we start to move in that direction, we'll be okay. But we can't ignore that, right? We cannot ignore that these things have existed or they've become loose. Because I'll tell you honestly, what's happened in this position is more and more, each and every person that's filled that role, that's served in this capacity in the Secretary of State, they've kind of been looking to the future, right? They've been looking to future positions, U.S. Senate or governor or so on. And in order to stay electable, many times what happens is they're focused on applying more voter convenience or ballot accessibility, right? And there's a place for that. There is a place to ensure that everybody has the means. But we've created a system where it's no excuse. Like, it's all about convenience. So we've basically put aside the integrity of the election for the sake of convenience. And we've got to reverse the prioritization of that, right? We've got to go back to voter responsibility. And that falls on us. That falls on us. Because we have to play a role in becoming more involved and volunteering in that capacity as poll workers. But I also want to get us back to a system where it's hand-markable paper ballots. And that's really what we need to cast our votes. We don't need complicated, costly, or controversial systems that we cannot independently verify that are at the full disclosure of the vendors and the suppliers, which are foreign-based, and the practices we don't have any understanding or quality assurance. So you think about that, we've got to build more transparency into that process. And I think we need to get to a point, and I'm committed to working in this area. It's not going to happen on day one, but it is going to be a priority and an imperative for me, is to get back to the counting of these votes at our precincts, at our polling locations on election night, and the reporting of that by 10 p.m. and the known winner by midnight. Now, we do a decent job of getting our election results out, unlike other states, but we need to do a better job of doing it so that we have the verifiability right there on hand. And that's going to take us building more people into this role. So we're going to have to reclaim it by becoming more involved in it. But I am going to facilitate programs of outreach to youth, to former first responders, military, and others that live within our county, and invite them to come into that process, to have lists of people to come into that process. And that could all be done through directives, all through engagement. It's a factor of will for our Secretary of State to move in that direction. And when it comes to voter registration databases, we've got to secure those data much, much better. Right now, we have a system where if somebody tampers with your voter registration record or database, you don't know because the information's writing itself over. Well, we need to have a recording of every transaction's history there. So that's going to be the key, is that we introduce the level of protections in the voter registration databases, because that's our information after all, right? And that includes online. You register online, we've got to get away from a system that actually involves us not allowing somebody who stole our information, whether that be driver's license or social security number, to actually use that to register us without our knowledge. And we have a lot of weak areas in identity proofing and things like that. We can strengthen it. We can make this more like a bank, where your transactions are much more secure. And you cannot transact in a bank if you haven't been authenticated. So we need to treat that like our vote is like our bank account. If we can apply some of those technologies, that would be fantastic. And so those are some areas that I'm going to be working hard for us to have a system. And once we enact that, just think about the possibilities. Ohio can set the pace for every other state, seeing that we're moving in that direction. We have something here that I think is really unique. President Trump is in office, and he has a absolute unique ability, and he has weighed in on this issue. And he's giving us a chance in putting forward his executive order, which can allow us to change some of these procedures and so forth. So we've got to follow his lead on that. He needs somebody at the state level in this time who's has unique experience in the deep knowledge of the election laws and procedures in Ohio to be able to do that, because it cannot get done if the states do not go for it. So you need a chief election official that's ready to work with him and adopt that as quickly as possible.